What's going on, everybody? It's your man Louie T here with a brand new installment of the Louie T Network podcast. It is Monday, which means we are fresh off of a weekend that I must say was one of the most unique weekends I've experienced in quite some time from a content standpoint. We will discuss that here on today's podcast, amongst other topics. Speaking of other topics, the thing that I'm going to talk about towards the top of the show kind of led me to today's gym dropping session. And so we'll elaborate and expound upon that as we get into today's show. NBA playoffs are now into the second round. We've had one second round game take place, and it was a surprising outcome. So we'll talk about that and talk about the other series, preview those. We've got two more games tonight, and kind of take a look at what the second round looks like and kind of start to look forward to what we think ultimately is going to happen in these playoffs. We've seen enough basketball now to kind of start to formulate opinions. I still don't think you can make concrete decisions on what is or isn't going to happen, but I think you can start to formulate those types of ideas. So we'll get into all of that and then some today, the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 416th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. Of course, I'm your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. What a weekend it was. One of the most unique weekends in hip-hop history. I don't know if we've ever seen anything quite like what we just experienced over the weekend between Drake and Kendrick Lamar and the beef that has been brewing for quite some time, but really spilled over this weekend. I've never seen anything like it, and I enjoyed it. I don't know where it's heading next. You know, this weekend was so taxing on that beef. I felt like a lot was, I think, expended, right? A lot of energy was expended over the weekend in trying to keep up with one another. And I don't know how much is left in the tank for either participant. Honestly, I don't know if we need more, right? I don't know if there needs to be more. I think there will be more, but I don't know if there needs to be. We talked about that. If you're not subscribed to MusicHead University, do yourself a favor and go ahead and make that happen. We talked a lot about those diss tracks, and we got a plethora of them over the weekend. Again, never seen anything like it. We discussed those thoroughly over the weekend, and they gave us a ton of content to discuss over the weekend. Is we got 5 diss tracks in the span of Friday to Sunday. 5, right? 3 from Kendrick and Drake combined on Friday. We got another one on Saturday from Kendrick, and then we got a response to that from Drake on Sunday. So, yeah, I'd say it was a pretty hectic weekend, to say the least. So, wow. I'd say wow is the way to describe all of that took place. My head was spinning over the weekend, and that led me to today's gym dropping session, which we're going to talk about here in a second. But what's the best rivalry in the NFL? And I think that's an interesting question, you know, and we'll get into that in a second. But I saw the most interesting and fascinating thing I've ever seen on the interweb in my life yesterday night. I was so captivated by this that I sat there and I watched all 2 hours and 20 minutes of it. And it could have been 6 hours and 20 minutes, and I would have sat there just as captivated. I didn't want it to end. I'll tell you what that is later on in today's show. But let's talk about the NBA playoffs. And we're into the second round now. We had a game 7 on Sunday, so that was the only game that took place on Sunday. Cavs and Magic. And I think everything that I told you about the first round, with the exception of the Knicks, everything that I told you after the series had started and I got to see what was going on happened. I was wrong with my pre-series predictions. I was wrong about Knicks and 76ers. I was wrong about Pacers and Bucks. Even though I told you I thought the Bucks were in trouble without Giannis, after the game 1 blowout by the Bucks, I thought, okay, everything's been restored. They're going to be fine. That was a lie. Okay. The lie detector test determined that was a lie. But we had a conversation on Wednesday last week about all these series, and we pretty much had an idea of where they were heading. At that time, the Sixers had forced a game 6, but I felt like they were going to lose that series, and they did. The Bucks had forced a game 6, but I thought they would lose the series, and they did. I told you at that time that the Magic and Cavs series was knotted up at 2 apiece. They were going back to Cleveland. The Magic had figured out some things at home. However, I told you that they're a young team and they weren't going to be able to win on the road. And they weren't, even though they gave it a valiant effort. The home teams won every single one of those games, including game 7. We'll talk about that here in a second. And so the Cavaliers advanced to round 2. And I told you that I felt like the Mavericks were going to win that series against the Clippers. And they did that as well. Now, what I didn't see, I thought it would go 7. I don't know why I thought it would go 7, but I thought it would go 7. And I felt like the Mavericks, who have already proven multiple times in the Luka Doncic era that they're not afraid nor opposed to going on someone's home floor in a game 7 and winning. They've done that already before, maybe even multiple times. I mean, the Suns one that they did a year or 2 ago was one of the most jarring game 7 outcomes I've ever seen in my life. But they took care of business in game 6 at home, did the Mavs. So they're moving on. And that actually begs the question, what's next for the Los Angeles Clippers? Kawhi can't ever stay healthy. Paul George is now officially going to be a free agent. I still see him coming back, but there are a lot of teams going to be courting him this offseason, and he may elect for a change, right? He still wants to win a championship, and if this current group as constructed can't stay healthy and can't get it done, there are other options that may provide a better chance for him, i.e. the Philadelphia 76ers, if he were to depart this summer, because they're missing that third guy. Now they got a 1-2 punch that is as good as any in the NBA with Maxey and Joel Embiid when those two are healthy, obviously. But the biggest disappointment for the 76ers is Tobias Harris. And he's a free agent, and they're not going to re-sign Tobias Harris this offseason. The man had 0 points in a closeout game at home to allow the Knicks to come into that building and beat them. So they're done with him, and they should be, because he's such an enigma. You don't know what you're going to get from night to night. And I talked about that when they won in game 5 in New York, or was it game 4 in New York? I think it was game 4 in New York. Whatever the case may be, it was game 5. It was game 5, and that was at home, I think. It should have been 2-2, 1-1-1, and the Knicks had the home court advantage. So it was game 5 that he played well in, and they won on the road when they were down 3-1. And I said, he's the X factor. When Tobias Harris is aggressive and he's scoring, it changes their offense and the way you have to defend them drastically. And for him to go goose egg and only take like 2 or 3 shots, it tells you all you need to know about Tobias Harris and why he can't be there. And so it begs the question, what will Paul George decide to do? Because I think there are better options available for him to try and win an O'Brien trophy. I don't think that it's going to happen in LA because of the volatility of Kawhi Leonard. It seems like he's never healthy. I think they had a great chance to win an NBA championship last season had Kawhi stayed healthy, but he couldn't. They would have beaten the Suns in that first round series, and who knows what happens after that. Paul George tried to carry them last year and got some help this year with James Harden, and it wasn't enough because they didn't have Kawhi, and he wasn't healthy. But we'll see what happens there. I think Luka and company have a legitimate shot. I expect them to beat the OKC Thunder. So let's go back to the Game 7, close out round 1, and then let's talk about round 2. So Cavs Magic Game 7 in Cleveland. This was a big one for Donovan Mitchell and the Cavs, because if they were to lose this game on their home floor, this would mark the second year in a row that they would have lost the series in the first round, having home court advantage on their home floor in the closeout game. So you couldn't allow that to happen 2 years in a row. And there was conversations about whether or not Donovan Mitchell would be a piece that you would look to move if you can't get out of the first round with Donovan Mitchell on your team with home court advantage 2 years in a row. So there was a lot riding on this game in terms of the future of the Cavaliers, what decisions they may or may not have made. I don't know if you have to answer those questions now after advancing and beating the Magic. What we saw from the Magic, however, is a young team on the rise, trying to learn how to win. This was their first exposure to playoff basketball. Thought they handled the situation as well as you could expect from a young team, but they couldn't get it done on the road. And that's usually the difference between veteran teams and young teams, is the ability to go on the road in the face of adversity and a crowd that wants to see you lose and find a way to get it done and fight through some of those adverse moments when you're going through a little bit of a drought. The crowd gets involved. They go on a run. You've got to be able to stem that tide and tell them to sit down and shut up and be able to, make your mark on the game and ultimately find a way to get it done. And they weren't there yet. They had the lead at halftime. Paolo Banchero was doing what he had done for much of the series. And then they went into a little bit of a drought. And too much of their offense is predicated on ISO ball. Just give it to Paolo and get out of the way. And that's only going to work for so long, right? And ultimately, Donovan Mitchell and the rest of that Cavs unit got it done in the third quarter, ultimately erased a significant deficit, took the lead heading into the fourth, and never really looked back. So they advanced. Mitchell was fantastic in the series, scored 50 in the Game 6 loss, and then had another 36 in a decisive Game 7. So they move on to now take on the Boston Celtics. That doesn't seem like a fair fight. Again, Boston, to me, it's their Eastern Conference to lose, right? They are the best team in the conference, head and shoulders. The only team that I think can give them a run at this point, looking at how things have kind of unfolded, are the New York Knicks. Now, I will say Indiana is a young team with a lot of talent that if they were to get past the Knicks somehow, I could see them being, a team that could win 2 games or so. But the Knicks are the only team, and I still think that without Julius Randle, it'll be hard for them to win in a 7-game series against Boston, but we'd love to see it, right? Speaking of the Knicks, how about Knicks Pacers in the second round? Talking about bringing back some good memories. How about Knicks Pacers in the Garden, right? That's going to be fun, if not for the aesthetics, just the aesthetics of it. I don't think this is going to be a series that I'm necessarily going to enjoy, even though I expect Indiana to push these guys. The Pacers, I don't want to call them a boring team, but they're a faceless team almost. Now, Tyrese Haliburton is a star, and they got other really good players, and they're a young team, and they got Spicy P, and they got all these different guys, Obi Toppin that can hurt you and do so many different. It's just for whatever reason, the Pacers have always been one of these teams that you look at and just go, but they're the Pacers, though. Even when they had Reggie Miller and Rick Smits and the Davis brothers and, all of these dudes, Mark Jackson, it was still Indiana, right? It's still Indiana. Even when they had Chuck Person and he was doing the Chuck shimmy, right? He'd hit a three and hit you with the shimmy. It was still Indiana. You're like, bro, I can't get excited for Indiana Pacers basketball. There's just something about the Pacers, and I guess that Midwest vibe that just is a turnoff. Whatever the case may be, I do get a little bit of goosebumps. I do get a little bit of nostalgia when I see Pacers Knicks on the marquee in the playoffs in Madison Square Garden. Does something to me. So if for nothing else, that will be fun, but I still see the Knicks as the superior team. I expect the Knicks to take care of the Pacers, but this is a dangerous Pacers team. If New York gets caught slipping, and there were a couple of games that they got away with against the 76ers, that if they do the same thing, they won't get away with it against the Pacers. But they're the better team. I expect the Knickerbockers to advance to the Eastern Conference Finals, and boy, would that be a hell of a scene. Boston against New York. Wow, that'll be a great Eastern Conference Finals, if I may say so myself, just in terms, again, of the aesthetics of it. But Boston should take care of Cleveland, I think, in 5 games, honestly. I don't think this should be a series. As long as Boston doesn't get caught with their pants down, effing around with the Cleveland Cavaliers, let Donovan Mitchell go off for 50 and somehow Garland gets 27 or 28 in the same game, then you can get caught, because that's what happened in the Game 2 loss. They got hit with 23 threes and they couldn't keep up, right? That could happen, but I don't see it happening. But the Cavaliers, you let them catch fire. They got some guys that can shoot. Max Strus, Donovan Mitchell, Garland. They got some guys that can fill it up from deep if you're not careful. I don't see it getting to that point, though. I see Cleveland getting 1 game maybe and then going on about their business. Boston should take care of them in short order. Meanwhile, I think that Pacers-Knicks series is going to be compelling, but I still see the Knicks taking care of business in 6 games or so. It wouldn't shock me if they did it in 5, but I think the Pacers are good enough to get at least 2 games, put a little bit of a scare into the New York Knicks, but 6 is, I think, the limit for me there. I don't see that going to 7 games. It could. I wouldn't be shocked if it did, but I don't think it gets past 6. Meanwhile, on the west side of the bracket, you've got the 1 seed OKC Thunder, who swept through the first round, and the Pellies taking on the Dallas Mavericks. And I got the Mavericks winning that series. This is where I think the experience of the postseason starts to really play a factor, because if OKC had played anybody else but the Pellies, I'm not sure that they win that first round series in the West, that is. They definitely would not have beaten the Lakers. The Lakers gave the Nuggets all they could handle in that 5-game series and only won a game. Had they given that same effort against OKC, they win that series, right? I think this is where that playoff experience or lack thereof for OKC starts to come into play. And as long as Kyrie and Luka are healthy, they're going to win that series and advance to the Western Conference Finals, I believe. And now that series I could see taking 7 games. I'm going to say Dallas probably would be better served closing that out in 6 at home in Dallas. But as I mentioned already at the top of the show, Dallas has no problem going on the road and winning. They proved that, in past years and even this year, right? Going to the LA to the Clippers and beating them multiple times on their home floor. So they got no issues going on the road and winning, but I think you'd be better served knocking out the Oklahoma City Thunder with that rabid fan base and how that can feel like a college environment. You're better off just stealing one of these first 2 games, taking care of business at home. I don't think they're going to let you finish them off on their home court in game 5, but in game 6, you're up 3-2, finish off the deal there, right? That's how I see this series going. Split them in the first 2 in OKC, split them, go home, take care of business in both of those games, lose game 5, win game 6, move on to the Western Conference Finals. If it doesn't go that way, I'm telling you right now, if OKC wins both games, And I told my buddy this in the first round, who's a Suns fan, when they were playing the Timberwolves. I said, if you don't win one of those first 2 games in Minnesota, you're not winning the series. Now, I didn't see them getting swept, but I told them you're not winning the series. You win one of those first 2 games, you're going to win the series. I'm saying the same thing for the Dallas Mavericks. You win one of those first 2 games in OKC, you're going to win the series. You don't win one of those first 2 games, you've now given a young team all the confidence they need to win the series, and now you're in trouble. So I'm expecting Dallas to go in there, laser-like focus, sharp intensity, and get the job done. Win one of those. The first game is always the easiest to steal, right? See if they can get that done. And then, obviously, we already had our game 1 in Nuggets and Timberwolves. That's the only game 1 we've had in the second round thus far. And Ant-Man went off. I've been telling anybody that'll listen, I think he's the next face of the NBA. And me and my buddy were having a conversation about this. I sent him a text message about maybe a month and a half ago, and I said, who's the next face of the NBA? And, you know, I think he didn't want to say Ant-Man. He gave me some Shea Gilgeous-Alexander bullshit, and I was like, bro, be for real. Like, he's cool, but he's not flashy enough, right? You know, the little AT&T commercial, what a pro wants, well, that's more his speed, right? He's supposed to be this fashion guy, all that stuff. Yeah, he can keep doing those, but he's not the face of the NBA. He's not flashy enough, right? He's not explosive and dynamic enough. He's a nice name, and he'll continue to be really good, but Ant-Man is different. He's built different, and he's showing it right now. And that 43-point performance in game 1 on the road, some big shots late when the Nuggets tried to make a run to put him away. The kid has ice water in his veins. He's not afraid to share the basketball. He lets the game come to him, but when it's his time to take over, he takes over. And the reason I felt like he took a monumental step this year is he started to focus on the defensive end. He now is locked in as a defender, and he's an all-around NBA player now. He's not just an offensive, high-flying force. He can shoot the basketball, he can pass the basketball, but he can play elite-level defense. And I now think he is a complete player, and now the Timberwolves are dangerous. More dangerous than I think anybody thought heading into this postseason. They figured out how to utilize those 2 bigs. Remember, people were clowning them for trading all that they did for Rudy Gobert. Did not look good in year 1. This is why I don't think you blow up the Suns' big 3 yet. This is why I think you have patience when you put together something like Dame in Milwaukee, for instance. I think you have patience when you put some of these things together now. Dame in Milwaukee, they don't play defense, and Dame doesn't play defense. So I don't know if that's going to work or not. But I don't think you are hasty to blow those types of situations up. You need to give it time to mesh and gel. A lot of people wanted to run Rudy Gobert and that whole experiment off after 1 year of it not looking all that great. Clearly, they figured it out. The pieces are now falling into place, and that is a dangerous. And when I say dangerous, I mean dangerous team, because defensively, they may be the best team left in the postseason defensively. The amount of length they have on the defensive side of the ball and their ability to just about switch anything, even with Rudy Gobert on the court. And even though Rudy isn't the most fleet of foot, same can be said about Cat. Their size, their length, their ability to challenge even when you pass them makes those guys' abilities to switch ridiculous. Jaden McDaniels, to me, is the X factor there, especially on the defensive side of the basketball. They made it tough on Joker. He struggled from the field in that game because they threw 3 different bodies on him, including Naz Reid, who went off offensively. He's the 6th man of the NBA, man of the year in the NBA for a reason. This is a dangerous Minnesota Timberwolves team. That said, I still think the Nuggets are going to find a way to win this series, but they got to win game 2. I expect them to win game 2. If they don't win game 2, this series is over. If they win game 2, I expect them to go to Minnesota, win one of those 2 games. That will reset the series, give them back the home court advantage, and I expect them in those final 3 games to find a way to navigate their way through and win the series. This looks like a 7-game series right now. But if they lose game 2, and the game 2 is tonight, and if they lose game 2, this is not a 7-game series. They're done in 6. Okay. They win this game, they could be the ones raising their arms in 6 or in 7. But if they lose this game, go down 0-2, heading to Minnesota, they're done. I can't see the defending champions bowing out like that. So they got punched in the mouth, and it's the first time they've been down in a series in the last 2 playoffs. So this is uncharted territory for them here of late, right? Now let's see how the champs bounce back and respond to a little bit of adversity. I'm very interested to see what they do tonight. I'm expecting them to bounce back and win that game tonight, but we will see what happens. Anyway, that's what I see taking place. So just to recap, before these series really get underway, other than the Nugget series, which has already started, and I'm picking the team that's down 0-1, so you know I'm not just jumping on the team that has had early success. I've got the Nuggets and the Mavs advancing to the Western Conference Finals. I've got the Knicks and the Celtics advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals. I've got Mavs in 6. I've got Nuggets in 7. I've got Celtics in 5. And I've got Knicks in 6. Knicks in 6. So that is my NBA playoffs conversation. We will pick this conversation up Wednesday after we've seen some more of these games take place. We should have seen every single game won by then, but we'll discuss where we are with the playoffs and what we've seen early on in these series then. So let's get to our gem dropping session of the day. And let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T double E. Let me open you up, get you thinking a little bit. So that beef over the weekend, Kendrick and Drake, the back and forth nature of it, got me to thinking about the NFL and what is currently the best rivalry in the NFL. And when you stop and think about the word rivalry, what it means, what it embodies, and what that's looked like over the years in the NFL, and I start to think about what we currently have right now in the NFL, initially it was tough. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm like, there's really no dominant, like, take your favorite team out of the mix. And if your favorite team is the Chiefs, then you're okay, right? Because they're the Don Dadas right now. So they're going to be included in this discussion. But if your favorite team is the Bears or the Packers, take your team out of it, right? Just think about, and I really want to look at it from the lens of my team's not involved. I got no dog in the fight. And you want me to sit down for 3 hours and watch a game that I have no affiliation to. What's the one matchup that can get you to sit down in front of your television? You're actually anticipating this. What's the one matchup you can get excited and antsy for to sit down on a Sunday night to watch those two teams do battle, right? That's what I think about when I think about a rivalry. Not just, like this team started off the season 6-1 and this team started off the season 7-2 and this is a big matchup. No. Because that's only a big matchup because of how well those two teams are doing currently in the season. I'm talking about when the schedule comes out and you see these two teams' names against each other on the schedule in May, you're like, man, I can't wait to see that game, right? And as the season approaches and the records don't even really matter, you say that game with those two teams, with those two quarterbacks, whatever your criteria is, when those two teams do battle, when they lock horns, I need to be in front of my television set or I need to be in front of my mobile device watching this thing go down, right? That's what I think of when I think about rivalries. Must-see TV. No matter what's at stake, I need to see this. We went through a period in the NFL where we had legitimate rivalries. And I go back to my 90s nostalgia where Dallas and Green Bay, Dallas and San Francisco, Green Bay and San Francisco, those were rivalries, right? Because those were the best teams in the NFC. You knew one of those three teams from about 92 to about 96, you knew one of those three teams was going to go to the NFC Championship game, and one of those three teams was going to be representing the NFC in the Super Bowl. Dallas, San Francisco, or Green Bay, right? Those were the teams, and those were the rivalries in the regular season. We then kind of matured and matriculated our way to Brady v. Manning, right? Those two teams seem to win their divisions every year. So you expected to see some version of Brady v. Manning, whether it was in a Colts uniform or then later on in a Broncos uniform. You knew you were going to get Brady versus Manning in some way, shape, or form, right? The Steelers and the Ravens, when Roethlisberger was there, no matter who the Steelers Ravens quarterback was, it probably was at its peak powers when Joe Flacco was the quarterback. But you knew that game, you were going to be like, all right, this is going to be physical. And you know what? I'd even take it a step further, and I'd take Cincinnati, Pittsburgh. When Joey Porter had the whole situation when he came on the field, when Vontaze Burfict was knocking dudes' heads off, and, Hines Ward was dislocating dudes' jaws and stuff. I think, who was it? Was it Rivers' jaw that he dislocated with the blindside block? The linebacker from USC? Whatever the case may be, that rivalry, Steelers and Bengals, was as violent a rivalry as I think I've seen in the last 20 years. There was about 5-year stretch where those games were unhinged and you didn't know what the hell was going to happen. We all remember the Joey Porter game at the end when what was the receiver that got his Antonio Brown got his block knocked off, and Joey Porter comes off the bench, and a little bit of a melee ensues, and man, those were some epic battles, bro. I mean, those were, hey, I gotta watch Steelers and Bengals, right? Gotta watch this. When they had Ryan Shazier headhunting, and unfortunately, it was a headhunting shot that ended his career, but those games were some of the most physical and violent games I've ever seen, right? So that whole AFC North with Pittsburgh and Baltimore and Cincinnati, crazy. From about, I'd say maybe 05, 06. I think it started with Kimo von Oelhoffen taking out Carson Palmer's knee in the playoff game. So what was that? What was Palmer in the playoffs having his ACL torn by Kimo von Oelhoffen? What was that? 03 maybe? Oh, wait. Palmer was a rookie in 03, if I'm not mistaken, I think. So that probably was like 05 maybe? From like 05 to like 20, maybe 11. I don't know if there was a more physical and violent rivalry than Steelers Bengals. Ravens Steelers with Ray Lewis and and Terrell Suggs and Ed Reed on one side and Ben Roethlisberger and whatever killer bees you wanted to add in there, and Hines Ward at the time. That was a physical rivalry for a number of years. I think that has lost its luster, though. That's lost its fastball. I remember they were forcing that one down our throats on Thanksgiving night, and I don't know if that rivalry has been relevant since Jacoby Jones was running down the sidelines for a touchdown on Thanksgiving night, and Mike Tomlin tried to grab him as he was running down the sidelines for a touchdown. Like, I think once Roethlisberger retired, that rivalry lost its luster. The Steelers, while they're always in the mix, like those games are always compelling and they're close, but I don't really get that vibe. Like, I gotta watch this game, right? I'm more intrigued by Ravens Bengals right now with Flacco and Burrow when both quarterbacks are healthy. I'm more intrigued by those two locking horns in that division than Steelers and Ravens. But the last real, like, I don't know. The last, there have been some interesting rivalries. There was real legitimate bad blood between the Bucks and the Saints. Mike Evans and Marshawn Lattimore fighting each other just about every time they saw it. Like, it was literally on sight. Like, all right, bro, when I see you, I'm going to see you, right? And then you added in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson into that mix, and he was talking in Tom Brady's face. But the bad part about that situation was somebody was always getting their ass whooped, and it usually was the Bucs, the Saints just destroying them, right? So while it was fun to watch, it wasn't the most compelling football. I think right now, if I had to say, I've come up with three I think, what did I say? You guys said I slipped up. What did I say? What did I say? I must have said something crazy. I didn't feel like I said anything reckless, but I might have. I think there are three rivalries right now that I like. You just tell me the place and the time, and I'll be there. Right? I think there are three of those right now that Flacco versus Burrow. It was Flacco against Roethlisberger. Y'all know what I meant. Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. It's, Jackson versus Burrow, right? Jackson versus Burrow right now is the rivalry that I'm most intrigued by in that division. So I think there are three matchups right now that get my attention at peak performance, right? Get me to like, hey, you say that's week 7 Sunday night. I mean, I'm gonna watch every game. It doesn't matter. It could be, Jags and Titans. I'm gonna be watching. It doesn't matter. But there's certain ones where I'm excited, and you can tell that I'm excited. We talk about it, and you can hear the excitement in my voice. There are three matchups right now, and I'll rank them in the order in which I feel like it, they're the best, right? So number 3 for me right now in terms of rivalries is Chiefs and Chargers. I think Chiefs Chargers, every time those two teams lock horns, when everybody's healthy, it's must-see TV, man. That rival, and I think that's going to see an uptick now with Jim Harbaugh now becoming the head coach of the Chargers and giving them some legitimacy. I think they're now going to be damn good and really competing for AFC West supremacy with the Chiefs. They were already pushing the Chiefs to the limit. They were one of the few teams in that division that weren't scared to go into Arrowhead. Now the Raiders have, planted a bit of a flag there on Christmas Day this year, winning there. But the Chargers have always been the team that I thought pushed the Chiefs a little bit more than everybody else. But, it's family business. Even the Broncos have had their moments with the Chiefs too. But it's always felt like the Chargers. Those games have always felt like they've mattered a little bit more because I think the Chiefs always saw the Chargers as their, toughest and stiffest competition in that division. If they were going to, lose the division, or if it was going to come down to week 18 or 17 against somebody in the division, it'd be the Chargers. That's, I think, how the Chiefs always viewed them. So those games have been really tough, and it's usually one or two plays that swing the momentum in one team's direction or the other. I remember that game like maybe 2 years ago. Both of those Chiefs-Chargers games were crazy. But the one in LA late in the season, the Chargers had the Chiefs had to win it, and they did. And it was in epic fashion. I think it ended up being an overtime game. Travis Kelce went bananas, and they came back and won. They had no business winning that game. Remember the Thursday night game where where Herbert threw the pick six? They were dominating the Chiefs and would have won that game. And then Gerald Everett, who was dog tired, if you recall, asked to come out, tapped his helmet, and they told him stay in the game. Like he wasn't like they were going to run a play away from him. He was going to have a chance to rest. They run a play to him, right? And he like gives a half-ass effort because he's dog tired. Herbert expects him to be here. He doesn't make it there. Throws the ball right to, I want to say it was, oh man, Jalen something. I forgot the name of that corner. I think his last name starts with a W. And that was the first time we had ever heard of this guy, like number 35. And he picks it off like 99 yards, 101 yards, or some craziness for a touchdown. Changed the whole complexion of that game. The Chiefs ultimately get away and win there. There've been some really good back and forth matchups with those two teams involved. To me, that's the number 3 rivalry. Number 2 for me is Cowboys and Eagles. Every time those two teams get together, it seems like it's a big deal. It seems like they usually come down to the wire. A little bit disappointing. Last year on Sunday Night Football, the Cowboys routed the Eagles in that ball game. But remember, the first game between those two teams came down to the very last play of the game. And Dallas had the ball on the possession before. He throws it to the tight end who doesn't get in. He gets stopped at like the half-inch line, short of the end zone. Then they get the ball back. They drive it all the way down the field, and Dallas isn't able to get in the end zone. He ends up getting sacked by Hassan Reddick late in the game to kind of secure the victory. And that one was a really good, contest. And that's what they seem like. If you go back the year before, neither team had their quarterback in one of the games, right? So the last game was a shootout, and it was epic. Gardner Minshew had to start for Jalen Hurts, who was injured. They go into Dallas, and it's a crazy game. Dallas has a 3rd and 30 that T.Y. Hilton catches, ultimately leads to the game, winning touchdown. And the Eagles lose to the Cowboys in that game like 40-30, 34, some craziness like that, right? It was a hell of a game. Right after Christmas. Then the first game that year was no Dak. That was Cooper Rush. And that was a highly anticipated game. And that one was a close competitive game, but Dallas just didn't have enough. And the Eagles were able to kind of hold Dallas off at bay. So those games kind of always feel like they mean something. Those are usually two really good teams every year. And you usually look forward to those matchups. And they always put at least one of them on primetime television. So that's one of those games that you usually look forward to. And then, to me, and this is my opinion, again, this is, all subjective. And I can't wait to get to the comment section to see what you guys think. Another one, to me, and I think it's twofold, right? I tied these. I couldn't pick one because they are both really good. One is Bills Chiefs. That's 1A for me. 1B is Bengals Chiefs. Okay. And it seems like it always comes down to those 3 teams in the AFC, sort of like how it was in the mid-90s with the Packers, Cowboys, and 49ers. Kind of feels like that's the move right now in the AFC, Bills, Chiefs, and when Joe Burrow is healthy, the Bengals. Those games always seem to come down to the wire, some kind of wacky finish. Bills, to me, there's a slight edge for Bills Chiefs. We've seen that more times, and they always come down to like the very bitter end with some kind of controversial ending. We've gotten rule changes because of Bills Chiefs. Remember, they changed the overtime rules because of that outcome a few years back. We had the lateral this past year with the offsides penalty on oh my God, what is the receiver name out of Florida that was drafted by the Giants in the first round? Yeah, him, right? He was offsides with that crazy lateral that would have led to the touchdown for the Chiefs, but he got called back. So that game was wacky. It was zany. we've seen, yes, Tony, thank you. Kadarius Toney, Jay Willard, appreciate that. Kadarius Toney was offsides. Crazy game. It's always crazy when it's Bills Chiefs. They played again in the postseason. It was a fantastic game, fantastic game in which the Chiefs went to Buffalo and won. So we get that every year, right? We get that cross matchup because the Bills usually win their division. The Chiefs usually win their division. So we're guaranteed to get that in the regular season. And I look forward to it every year because I know it's going to deliver. We usually get that in the postseason too. And if we don't get that in the postseason, then we get the other one, which is Bengals Chiefs. In the regular season, those games have lived up to the billing every single time. They're usually played in the regular season in Cincinnati, and Cincinnati usually wins late, with a score or a defensive stop, whatever the case may be. Usually it's Burrow taking them down the field late in the game to lead them to the victory with the game-winning touchdown with like a minute 14 left, right? That's usually how those go. And then you get into the postseason, and those games are usually played in Arrowhead because the Chiefs usually have the higher seed, and the Bengals have gone in there and won twice, but they've also went in there and lost once. So, or is it they went in there and won once and then they lost once? I think they went in there, won that the 1 year they went to the Super Bowl, and then they lost in the AFC Championship game to the Chiefs with the penalty by the former Texas edge rusher that pushed Mahomes out of bounds late and gave them the 15-yard penalty, and Butker made the field goal. So I don't think that game went to overtime. It was going to go to overtime, I believe is what was going to happen. Joseph Osai was the culprit there. And I remember the linebacker from NC State, Jermaine Pratt, going ape shit, like snapping when they were walking back into the locker room. Man, why you do that shit, man? Damn. This shit was hilarious because he was a free agent. He was a pending free agent, and he didn't know if he was going to be back, and he thought that was going to be his last shot to win a Super Bowl in Cincinnati. They re-signed him, but that's no here nor there. Those games are always compelling theater. So that's my 1A, 1B. To me, those are the best rivalries in the NFL right now. Go figure. You're talking about three of the best quarterbacks in the NFL locking horns, whether it's Allen Mahomes or it's Burrow Mahomes. It makes sense, right? Usually we pay for quarterbacks that get it done at a high level. We want to see those guys perform, and usually that makes for the best games. So to me, there aren't many great rivalries in the NFL right now. Like Bears and Packers has lost its luster. Maybe that gains a little bit of steam now with Caleb Williams showing up, and maybe they actually have a quarterback now that can bring them back to some type of respectability in Chicago. And that will lead with the Packers now having their new signal caller with Jordan Love. Maybe that becomes a real rivalry again. The Lions are like, hey, don't forget about us. We're actually the best team in the division right now. So if you want to talk about rivalries, make sure you put us in there. We'll see how that goes. The NFC East, like I said, it's really a two-team race. It's been that way, it seems like, for the longest time here now. And so not really much more to see in that division other than the top two teams there. The NFC South, it just isn't a very good division, so you don't really care. But when Brady was there and Drew Brees was still there, that felt big in the moment when those two teams would lock horns, right? Not so much anymore, right? Nothing in that division is all that compelling. And in the NFC West, it just seems like San Francisco is head and shoulders above the rest of the competition, but, they can get got by anybody in that division. The Rams can get them, even though they've dominated the Rams in the regular season. And then that one time in the NFC Championship game, they lose, right? Go figure. But they've had the Rams number. Seattle can't seem to beat them either. That used to be a rivalry with Dick Sherman and, Michael Crabtree. That whole situation when Cap was there and the Legion of Boom, right in that 2012 to 20, like maybe 15, 16 window, That was a massive rivalry for a little while there. That was must-see TV for about a 4 or 5 year stretch. That no longer exists. In the AFC, I've given you the ones that I think resonate with Bills, Chiefs, and Chiefs and Bengals. I don't think that there's an AFC East, matchup that gets the juices flowing necessarily. I look at the AFC North, and like I said, when Burrow is healthy, when Jackson is healthy, I'll sign up for Ravens and Bengals. That's a really good matchup between those two teams. But none of the other ones really move me. Down south, there's nothing to be had down there. Nothing. Not a single matchup that I'm clamoring to see in the AFC South. And then in the AFC West, I already told you that Chargers and Chiefs, when those two teams are healthy and right, that's a really good matchup. And I think it's only going to intensify now with Jim Harbaugh being in the mix, entered into the mix as the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. So that's something that I do think has some traction and some legs. But anyway, I digress. Let's get to the comment section, see what you guys think about that. We'll make some social media maneuvers. I'm a midday marauder. Y'all know how this works. If you don't, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comments read on the air if they are pertinent. If you want to ensure that your comment is read on the air, super chats are the best way to do that. We should be able to get to a number of comments today. However, I try to make sure that I got on early enough so that we could have some time to converse back and forth. Let me go ahead and set the table, though. If you are a Commanders fan, I will be live tonight and tomorrow night talking Commanders. Tonight, I've got a special, well, the next 2 nights really are both kind of like special, command post live shows. I don't usually do live shows in this kind of pocket, but I was debating back and forth on whether I wanted to go live or just do an upload, but I want to actually have dialogue with you based off of the conversation that I'm going to bring to the table. So I'm going to be live tonight for the Command Post Live in that 8:30 window, and we'll chop it up then. And then tomorrow is the big show. So I got all the fellas, the Commanders Kings coming onto the channel, Rio, Ed, Rico, myself, chopping it up, talking Commanders draft, talking about what's next for the Commanders, any surprises, et cetera, et cetera. We'll be diving into all those topics tomorrow night at 8:00 p.m. sharp. So get your popcorn ready for that. And we'll be talking about what transpired with the Commanders draft and how we all felt about what has taken place and how we feel as we have now really completed our offseason, how we feel heading into training camp. So be on the lookout for that tomorrow night as well. So with that said, be looking forward to chopping it up with you guys the next couple of nights, talking Commanders football. Hopefully you'll be able to join me. That said, let's get to the comment section and see what you guys have to say and see if you guys have anything for me. Let's see. Ghost Rider says, will the schedule release on Thursday? I don't think so. Normally the NFL plays it up. They'll let us know at least a week in advance. So I think the schedule release will be, and I told you already when I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be next week. I think it's going to be somewhere in that May 15th, 16th range, 14th, 15th, 16th range, somewhere in that neighborhood. So next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is when I think they're going to release it. Normally they do the schedule release on Thursdays. So my guess would be, what is next Thursday? The 15th? Next Thursday is the 16th. So my guess would be that it's going to be the 16th would be my best guess. I don't know. Like, they haven't told us anything, but they're not going to spring it on us with 2 days to prepare, right? They're gonna build it up. They've already put out a hype video for it, so we know it's coming. but they're going to give us time, right? They're going to give us time. They're going to try to build it up and make it into a big thing. But we all know that the schedule release is the most overhyped NFL date on the calendar, because half the schedule is already leaked by the time you get to 8 o'clock when they're supposed to release the entire schedule. Like, throughout the day, you're getting, this leak and that leak. And so you're putting pieces of the puzzle. Well, this team said we're playing them in week 4. So we know we got them in week 4. We already know we playing this team in week 8. And Dallas has the Thanksgiving game, and we know we're playing them on Thanksgiving. I'm just talking about in the past, right? I hope we're not playing Thanksgiving Day against Dallas. I don't want that shit this year, right? Let Jaden get his feet wet and let him get comfortable, and then I want to go bless those boys on Thanksgiving. Let me get a year off. It feels like we've been on Thanksgiving almost exclusively here for the last 3 or 4 years, right? We've been up there quite a bit. Let me get the year off, right? But anyway, I digress. I don't think it'll be this Thursday. I think it'll be the following Thursday. Ghost Rider. Kevin the PRF writes, best NFL rivalry at the moment has to be Terry Fontenot versus George Patton. These two are fighting neck and neck for the worst GM, and neither is letting up. See, I'm not going to allow the Terry Fontenot disrespect to take place, because, yeah, those were some questionable moves made in the draft by the Atlanta Falcons. But I like the move of Kirk Cousins. I like the moves that they made in free agency. And I think that they're very close to being the team that we look at in that division and say they're the best team in that division. I think that could happen as soon as this year. Meanwhile, George Patton seems to have made every wrong move here over the last 3-4 years, from trading for Sean Payton to trading for Russell Wilson to hiring Nathaniel Hackett because you thought you were going to get Aaron Rodgers. Just every move has been the wrong move, right? So let's see if getting Bo Nix is finally the right move. But they've made a series of bad decisions in Denver, and they have nothing to show for anything that they've done since George Patton has taken over. I'd say right now, if we're talking on paper, not with behavior and things of that nature, if you're just talking on paper moves, George Patton is probably the worst right now in terms of what he's done, his body of work. It's been pretty bad since he's gotten to Denver. Miss P is having some fun here at Drake's expense. Let's see. Miss P says, did you see that thin hair pony puff Jimmy Butler trash talking my Celtics, and Pat Riley said any player not on the court needs to be quiet? Yeah, I did see that. First of all, Pat Riley ain't for the shits. Like, Pat Riley don't play that shit. That's rule number one. I was watching a short, and I don't know if y'all know this. I think I've told y'all this. I go down the rabbit hole more with shorts than any other thing currently on the interweb. All it takes is one really good short to get me going, and then it's swipe, and then it's the next one. And if that one's really good, it's swipe. And then next thing you know, an hour later, I'm like, bro, what are we doing? Stop. What are we doing right now? Put the phone down. Okay? Shorts get me. And I watched a short with Carmelo Anthony on his podcast he has with Mero, right? And he was telling a story about when he first got into the league, him and D-Wade, like, they're super tight, right? And so they had a real relationship off the court, and they were playing the Heat in Miami. And he says that they come on the court for warm-ups, and he said this is the team with Melo, AI, and all of those dudes, the team that made it to the Western Conference Finals. So he says they're over there bullshitting, horsing around, kicking the balls and making the rookies go get them and shit like that, right? And he's like, the Heat run out onto the floor with their shirts tucked in, like military-like precision. They go sit down on the bench, and Carmelo sees D-Wade, right? And he goes, yo, D-Wade, what up, boy? What up? And he gives him a head nod, and he's like, yo, what up, D-Wade? And D Wade just goes, and Melo's like, yo, what? Hey, what's going on with that, man? He tripping. Hey, D, what's up, bro? What up? And he said, D Wade just looked at him and went. And he said the second head nod killed him, right? He was like, yo, that shit killed me, bro. So he's like, oh, bet it's like that? Word? So, and Carmelo's not mine now. I'm about to put 50 on his head now. I'm going to try to put 100 on him if I can, right? I don't know what happened. I don't know how we got here, but I'm about to try to destroy this man. As soon as they got off the bench and they started, doing the shoot around, he ran over to Melo and grabbed him real quick and was like, bro, it's not like that. It's all love. We can't talk to nobody. They told us we can't say nothing to nobody when we sitting on the bench. He was like, okay, got it. Cool. So that's just a little bit into the mind of Pat Riley, right? He's old school. Pat will always be that way. Going back to his Laker days, then his Knick days, and his Heat day, Pat has always been a no-nonsense type of dude, ruling with an iron fist. So Jimmy Butler talking trash when you're not on the court, that's not something Pat Riley is trying to see take place, right? So he definitely checked Jimmy like, bro, that's not Heat culture, right? That's not what we do. You ain't playing, keep your damn mouth shut. But in the same breath, so they was like, so does that mean Jimmy's available? He's like, hell no, we ain't traded Jimmy Butler. You out your damn mind? But yeah, I heard him talking. We heard his jokes. We heard him talking shit. But at the end of the day, they're where they're supposed to be, and your Celtics are where they're supposed to be. So y'all got the last laugh when it's all said and done, because you're moving on and they are moving home. Got a super chat here from my guy, Christopher McLaughlin. Thank you for the super, Chris. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Always appreciate your generosity. My guy, Chris, writes, hey, Lou. What's up, Chris? Hope all is well with you and the family. Likewise, as always, hope you and the fam are doing splendiferous. My guy, Chris, writes, 3 questions. 1, what role do you think Rob Pelinka had on the firing of Ham and the season the Lakers had? 2, who is the favorite in the AFC East now? 3, is Anthony Edwards the best two-way player in the NBA now? Why or why not? So 1, what role do I think Rob Pelinka had on the firing of Darvin Ham and the Lakers season? A huge part of that, because when you're in LA, it's all about saving face, right? Somebody's got to be the fall guy. I'm not telling you that Darvin Ham was a fantastic coach, but I always feel like the coaches bear the brunt of the blame in the NBA. And a lot of times it be the players that be effing stuff up, not the coaches. But, if you don't have the type of respect around the league that allows you to be able to have a slip up or two, you're going to get fired after, what the Lakers, just did. You look at last year, you get swept by the Nuggets. You look at this year, you go and you lose 4-1. And you could argue the Lakers could have easily won that series 4-1. I mean, they were up in just about every single one of those games and had a shot to win late, and they just didn't get it done. Probably with every game, with the exception of the first loss in LA, where the Nuggets went there and kind of, did them dirty, and kind of won that game kind of going away. Every other game, all the games in Denver, and then the one that LA won in LA, all the games that the Lakers had their shot to win it, and they just didn't. You had 2 Jamal Murray game winners. I mean, that tells you all you need to know about that series. But a lot of people put the blame on Darvin Ham and his lack of adjustments. I know there were a couple of things that I thought he did that were a little questionable to me. And again, you get beat up by the same team 2 years in a row, and you're running out of time. And again, the league is run by the players, and it's never more present than with LeBron. I'm not sure if LeBron James, and I hate to do this to LeBron because sometimes it's unfair, but if LeBron wanted Darvin Ham as the head coach, Darvin Ham would still be there. It's not hard, right? If Darvin Ham was LeBron's guy, he'd still be the coach. But I don't think Darvin Ham and LeBron James always see eye to eye. I don't think that LeBron is a big fan of everything that Darvin Ham does, and thus he's no longer there, right? But Rob Pelinka is a guy that is in a position where you have to save face. And I honestly think Rob Pelinka has done a really good job of putting together and assembling a roster that could win a championship. If they were healthy with Jarrett Vanderbilt and what's the other big? Wood, right? Christian Wood. If those dudes were healthy, especially Jarrett Vanderbilt, where they really got hurt in that last series is his ability to play and switch and play almost all 5 positions. He would have been a guy that would have been a nightmare for a guy like Michael Porter Jr., who had a really big series, or even a guy like Jesus. Gordon, who had a monster series, right? One of the biggest rebounds and plays of that series was his offensive rebound that he kicked back out to Michael Porter. You could also say at the end of a game, Vanderbilt is a guy you could have sicked on Jamal Murray, right? With that length and that size and his ability to move his feet, Vanderbilt would have been an X factor in that series. And I actually thought it was a really good roster that they put around LeBron and AD, and they just didn't get it done. But from a coaching standpoint, yeah, some things could have been done better. But yes, Darvin Ham was the fall guy. I'm not telling you he was a great coach. Not telling you that at all. But in the NBA, the coach is usually going to be the fall guy. And Rob Pelinka, I actually thought, did a good job of putting together a roster that gave LeBron and AD a chance to hoist a trophy. And, unfortunately, they had some injuries throughout the year. You didn't get out of certain players what you thought you were going to get out of those guys. The injury to the former Heat guard that they brought over that they thought would really help them, he got injured and he was really never the same. So he didn't really provide them much of anything. They just had too many injuries. And, LeBron's old, so you can't have the onus be on LeBron, even though he tried. Other guys had to step up and they didn't get enough contributions from the others when it's all said and done. But to answer your question, yeah, Rob Pelinka, is going to pass the buck, and he's going to put that pressure on Darvin Ham and say it was his fault. Who is the favorite in the AFC East now? I still think it's I think people are going to look at I was about to say the Bills. It's the Jets to me. Excuse me. Aaron Rodgers healthy again. And I thought this way last year. I thought that had Aaron Rodgers stayed healthy last year, they would have been a good team last year. I think that they're an even better roster now than they were last year. And if they're healthy, they're a dangerous team. And this year, they're going to have a quiet offseason without the distraction of Hard Knocks being in their facility. They're going to go about their business. If Rodgers is healthy, and again, we're assuming, and until we see otherwise, we're assuming that this is Aaron Rodgers, MVP of the league just a short 2 years ago, Aaron Rodgers, and not some, lesser version that's starting to decline and look like Father Time is tapping him on the shoulder, Aaron Rodgers. If Aaron Rodgers still has his fastball, the Jets are immediately a serious contender in the AFC. The Bills have taken a massive step back from a roster perspective, but I wouldn't count out Josh Allen in that group. As we saw last year when their backs were up against the wall at 6-6, they won 5 straight games to make it to the postseason and had a shot, right? And had a shot. So I wouldn't count out the Buffalo Bills. I don't think the Dolphins factor into this equation. I don't. I just don't think Tua Tagovailoa is good enough to compete with an Aaron Rodgers or a Josh Allen. And until they debunk this narrative, I think the Dolphins are soft. They're fast as hell, but they're soft. You put them in a cold environment, and I don't think they're going to be able to flourish or thrive in that environment, i.e. Buffalo or Kansas City in December or January. So, yeah, I'm not buying what the Dolphins are selling. But I think the Jets are that team. And I think they are the favorites in the AFC East. If I had to put a team, if I had to put odds on it, I'd put the odds in the favor of the Jets. And then lastly, is Anthony Edwards the best two-way player in the NBA right now? Why or why not? Yes, I think we have arrived at that destination. And I had this conversation with you guys about 3 weeks ago prior to the start of the NBA playoffs when Knicks fans were jumping on my back about Jalen Brunson being a superstar. And I said, there are levels to this shit, right? Because you become a superstar at this time of the year. Anybody could play their asses off and make a name for themselves in the regular season. And the biggest rebuttal to that statement is Tracy McGrady, right? Never had any playoff success. No postseason success for T-Mac. But we could argue as to why, but he did some extraordinary things in those series. He just never had enough. Whether it was help around him or the team he was just playing was just superior to the one that he had. Tracy McGrady had already established himself as that dude, though. But he never had any postseason success, and he was a superstar. I look at Jalen Brunson in that first round series he had against the 76ers, and I said, okay, now you're trying to ascend into that superstar category. Same could be said for Anthony Edwards. I think everyone knew he was on the cusp of being that guy, right? Everybody has seen the dunks. They've seen the 40 and 50-point outbursts. They've seen him start to rise to that level that it takes to be the guy, right? But he needed to do it when it mattered most, and he's now doing it. The series he put in against the Suns, including that memorable game one where he went at KD and, took over that game. And then the closeout game in which he went off, right? Then to kind of carry that over into game one against the Nuggets on the road and put up 43. He's announcing to the NBA, I'm here. And you got guys like Charles Barkley saying he's the next coming of Kobe or Jordan. Well, everybody said that a year ago, but everybody needed to see, like guys like Barkley needed to see it in the postseason, though. But we've already seen it. We knew that if this guy dedicated himself on the defensive end, that there was no telling what he could be. He's now dedicated himself on that side of the court. And because the offensive prowess was always there. He was always an athlete. He came into the league out of Georgia as an athlete. And the only thing we wondered is, could he consistently shoot the basketball? Well, he's established himself as a consistent shooter from distance. The mid-range is on lock. And we know he can take anybody off the dribble. And once he elevates, just get out of the way. Similar in a similar regard, and unlike John Morant, this dude is 6'7", 6'8". So unlike John Morant, who's 6'3", you're talking about a 6'8", 215-pound man coming at you versus a 6'3", 195-pound guard trying to dunk on you. It's a big difference. And yes, he's playing that defense now too. So, yeah, I think he's the best two-way player in the NBA right now. And he's making a statement because not everybody really wants that crown that is very heavy of being the face of the NBA. You think you want it, but you have no idea what that entails. And it takes a lot to be that guy. But when, LeBron finally passes that torch, when Steph Curry is no longer among the elites in the NBA, somebody's got to take over. I don't know if he'll have an NBA championship under his belt by then, but Ant Edwards is ascending towards the top of that list of guys that may ultimately say, hey, I'm the new face of the league, or at least throw my name in the hat to be the face of the league. He's making a compelling argument right now. Yeah, I do think he's the best two-way player in the NBA right now. Thank you for that super chat, Christopher McLaughlin. Let's see. Where did we leave off? think we were down here somewhere. Yeah. Okay. Miss P had talked about Jimmy Butler talking trash. So we'll pick up right there. Let's see. I don't see any more comments aimed at me. We'll just keep it pushing and get out of here. So Gregory Lightbody says, I'm seriously worried about Washington offensive tackle situation and the fact that we should have kept May. We should have selected May. I don't really have anything to add to that. I'll talk about some things tonight, but that seems like an old conversation now. Like, we drafted who we drafted. We moved on. I don't really have – we talked about that all draft season. I don't really have anything to add to that. Ghost Rider writes, rookie minicamp will be on Friday, and we'll see the numbers of the rookies. Yeah, I think that's a conversation I want to have during the course of the week, because I went looking at the numbers of the rookies, or the free agents, rather, to see what numbers they settled in on, because we never really got confirmation from all of them, just some of them who posted things on IG. Some of the ones you knew, like Bobby Wagner, you knew he was going to be 54, right? That's always been his number. So that wasn't a surprise. But, you know, Frankie Louvu told us he was going to 4. We saw that Jeremy Chin posted a picture of him in a Commander's uniform in number 11. So we knew he was going to do that. But I don't think we knew everybody else's number. So I went in there to check to see what everybody else was doing. Mariota announced he was going to be the first quarterback in NFL history to wear the number 0. But we signed 21 guys in free agency. So if I'm only telling you about 4 or 5 dudes that declared their number, we still got 15 or 16 dudes that have to, you know, get numbers. And so I was going through the number list, looking at what everybody did and seeing what's still available. And it'll be interesting to see what some of these rookies choose. But you got to remember, too, it's not set in stone what they choose now, because you got guys that are holding up, you know, roster spots and jersey numbers that won't be here come the end of August. And that's when you'll, you know, see guys settle into their number. Like, you might come in as a rookie and you're, you know, Mikey Sainristil, you come in here and all of the 20s except for 27 are gone, right? 27 is the only 20 number that's available right now, if I'm not mistaken. I think all the rest of them are gone. I don't know if anybody took over Kendall Fuller's 29, but for the most part, every other number in the 20s is spoken for. 20 is spoken for. You can't wear 21. 22 is spoken for. 23 is spoken for. 24 is spoken for. One of the new guys came in and took 24. 25 is spoken for. 26 is spoken for. 27 is available. 28 you can't wear. 29 I think is available. I'm not sure. Somebody might have already snatched it up. And Austin Eckler took 30, right? So I'm like, damn, you might have no other number 27, and he might be like, 27 is nasty. He might take it for now. You gotta get in the 20s. And then you get some dudes cut, a couple of numbers free up, and he might switch numbers before the season starts. So it happens all the time. We'll see what ultimately comes of it. But it'll be interesting to see what some of these guys, you know, like Jaden Daniels, whatever number he selects is going to be his number. He's not changing, right? So we'll find out here shortly. Darnell Kelly says Washington and Chicago, which is funny. I hear your jokes. Let's see. Kevin the PRF says, here's to hoping Dan Quinn is successful enough and coming from Dallas to reignite our rivalry with them. It'd be nice. Fans got on me, I think it might have been a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, when I said it's really Dallas and Washington really isn't a rivalry anymore. And Washington fans don't want to hear it. Cowboys fans don't see us as a threat anymore. They laugh at us. You know, they put turkey legs in the Salvation Army bell because they expect to go and retrieve it at some point in the game and eat it. They throw alley hoops into the Salvation Army bell. They don't respect us. They laugh at us. You know, only we like. I don't ever like. I remember as a Duke fan, I remember shitting on the Maryland Terrapins when they were still in the ACC because they so badly wanted to be our number one rival, and they can't. That's North Carolina's position, and nobody's ever taking that. But you could argue there was a stretch there where they played us tougher than North Carolina did. And going into it might have been Cole Fieldhouse then. Going into when Gary Williams was their coach, going in there was bananas every year. It was the hardest place to go in and get a dub with some of those teams, with the Shane Battier teams and the JJ Redick team. It was so tough, and there were battles, right? But they wanted to be our number one so bad, and it used to be so funny because we used to sun them like y'all not even our rival for real, right? They were our rivals, but we used to sun them. That's kind of, I never want to be Maryland. I never want to be desperate like how they were to try to be somebody's rival and they don't see you as such. I never want to be that team. And it kind of feels like Commanders fans are holding on to the past and wanting so badly to be Dallas's chief rival, and we're not. And you just got to accept that shit. Until we become relevant again, we don't matter. We don't matter. We're not Dallas's rival. They don't respect us. They are more fearful of Philadelphia. They respect the Eagles. They know that's going to be a tough battle. They don't give a shit about Washington or the Giants. We're peons to them. We're just another game on the schedule that they expect to take care of. Until we get back to a level of respectability and consistency, you can't just be good one year and then go back to being ass the next year. Until we show up and we beat Dallas once and then beat them again the next year again. Like, you don't even have to sweep them, but you got to beat them. And not in a meaningless week 18 game that the Cowboys like pseudo need or don't need at all. And they have nothing to play for. I'm not talking about one of those games. I'm talking about week 9, Thanksgiving. You got Dallas on the schedule and you beat them. And they got Dak Prescott and he's healthy and you beat them. I'm not talking about beating them with the quarterback from James Madison as their quarterback or Andy Dalton at quarterback. I'm not talking about beating them then. I'm talking about with Dak Prescott at full strength. Something we haven't done since 2017 with Alex Smith. And even that win was trash, but I'll take them any way I can get them. We're a joke when it comes to Dallas, and that's no longer a rivalry. And I don't care if Washington fans don't like it. That's the way it is. Hopefully, to your point, Dan Quinn can come in here and change that up. But as of right now, that rivalry does not exist. So I see somebody said, Layla in the comment section says they said that the schedule release was on the 9th. Let me check. I'm going to check because maybe I'm not going to lie. I'm not keeping up with this shit. I just expected a grandiose announcement, and I thought it would be give you at least a week's worth of time to adjust. But they might have said it was this Thursday. NFL schedule release. Let's see. Signs point to regular season schedule release next week. And this was an article written today. So yes, it's not the 9th. That would be this week. They're going to roll that thing out. I think it's going to be next Thursday. That's my guess. That's me putting my expertise on it and just telling you how the NFL has done this over the years and how I've seen them roll this out. It feels like middle of May, Thursday. So the 16th is what I think, but we'll see. Could be the 15th on that Wednesday. Jay Willard says, Lou, do you think the Commanders will have a huge veteran presence at rookie minicamp because of the new staff? No, I don't. If they don't have to be there, they're not going to be there. Now, some guys show up because they're getting work in and they've been at the facility and they've been in town all offseason and that's not going to change. But if you live elsewhere, if you don't live here in DC and you're spending time with your family, and it's a rookie mandated camp, which the next camp will be. It'll be a rookie mini. I'm not coming to that if I'm a veteran. No, I don't think you'll see. But what you will see, as we saw with the first veteran OTA, is that they had 100% attendance rate, which we never had when Chase Young and Montez Sweat were here, because you knew one of the two was going to miss, if not both. We had 100% attendance rate. And I expect that when we get to the other OTAs. Sean, do you think Jaden Daniels fits the scheme that Cliff runs, and would you consider Brian Robinson a top 20 running back? Yes, I do think he fits the scheme. We've seen a guy like him work in the scheme with Kyler Murray already, so we know that his skill set fits in what Cliff Kingsbury likes to do. As far as Brian Robinson being a top 20 back in the league, I mean, how many really good backs are there in the NFL? As is. He hasn't rushed for 1,000 yards in a single season yet. He hasn't had the consistency because he hasn't been given the opportunity to. So it'll be hard for me to elevate him over guys that have done it in this league consistently, who have put up some yards, who have done some things that we respect. I'm a little biased towards Brian Robinson because I see what he can be. But, I mean, I'd have to see a list of running backs. But I doubt that he'd be in the top 20. Just thinking about the NFL and how many really quality backs there are, it's hard for me to say that he'd be top 20. Just thinking about, if you just go through the list of teams and they're starting running back, Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb and all the running backs we saw, change teams, Josh Jacobs and Tony Pollard and Aaron Jones, and I mean, we go on and on and on. Saquon Barkley and, all of these different running backs. And we haven't even scratched the surface of running backs in this league, right? Christian McCaffrey and all of those dudes. Kenneth Walker III. There's so many dynamic backs. There's so many young backs. Breece Hall. There's no way he's top 20. I bet you I could come up with a list of 20 guys that are in front of him. But I would say that he's probably not too far outside of that list, because, again, it's not like a bunch of dominant backs in the league right now. But he hasn't even rushed for 1,000 yards in a league where 1,000 yards doesn't mean what it used to. For him to have not eclipsed 1,000 yards in his career yet, speaks to the lack of. And what's his career high at this point? I'd say he probably hit 800 and something this year. He should have eclipsed 1,000 already. If he didn't have the gunshot in his rookie season, let's see. His first year was 797, and last year was 733. And what's crazy is, and I kept telling people this and they didn't want to hear what I was saying, he had 797 yards on 205 attempts in just 9 games in his rookie season, which he would have eclipsed 1,000 had he played the first 4 games of the season that he missed or whatever. And then I think he might have missed. He played in 12 games. He started 9 of them. He missed the first 4 games or so of the season. Last year, he played in 15 games. He did not play in 2 of them. The final 2 games, I think, or so of the season, he was out, I believe. But he had 733 yards and 178 carries last season. So, I mean, when you look at that and you see how much more he was averaging per attempt, you just think about what he could have done had he gotten more opportunities, but that's nor here nor there. It's hard to put a guy ahead of running backs in the league who have rushed for 1,000 yards, who hasn't done it yet. So, yeah. Let's see. Samuel S. writes, I think it's fair to say the Bills Chiefs, considering the fact that if it weren't for the Bills Chiefs, we would have been in 3 of the last 4 Super Bowls. If it weren't for the Chiefs, the Bills would have been in 3 of the last 4 Super Bowls. I don't know about that. You can only say that if the Chiefs had beaten the Bills in the AFC Championship game. That only occurred once, right? So the Bills would have still had to have beaten they would have had to have beaten the Ravens last year. And the year prior to that, they would have had to beat Cincinnati. Or 2 years prior to that, they'd had to beat Cincinnati because they lost to Cincinnati, the Bills did, in the playoffs 2 years ago. And Cincinnati went to Buffalo and stomped a mud hole in them. And the year prior to that, Cincinnati went to Arrowhead. And that was the year that the Chiefs got put out by the Bills in the divisional round. And that's when we got the new overtime rules, because that game went to overtime and the Bills never saw the football in overtime. So you can't say that, because they would have they only got eliminated once in the AFC Championship game by the Chiefs. The other 2 years that the Bills went and lost to the Chiefs in the playoffs, they still would have had to go beat somebody else, and I'm not sure that they would have done that. I'm not sure that Buffalo would have gone to Baltimore and beat the Ravens last year in the AFC Championship game. I'm not sure that 3 years ago, had they beaten the Bills, or the Chiefs rather, in that game where they should have won, when they allowed them to get in the field goal range in 12 seconds to force overtime, I'm not sure if they would have beaten Cincinnati that year, right? Not sure if they would have done that. So can't say that, but I get your point. Ghost Rider writes, despite Dan Quinn being a defensive head coach, you think he could end up helping JD? I think the staff that he's put together and put around JD will help him. So yes, indirectly he will help him, but as a coach, yeah, he'll give him knowledge and he'll help him see defenses from a different perspective. And, hey, this is what I would do if I was defending you, type of thing. But I don't know if, I think personally, showing him that he cares, I think that was one of the things that attracted Jaden here to Washington, making it a comfortable situation for him, is that Dan Quinn showed interest in him as a person, which is one of his superpowers. If you're talking about on the field as a player, I think that's more so going to come from Cliff Kingsbury and the coaching staff and all the ex-quarterbacks that they have in the building that they've surrounded JD with, that's going to have that kind of an impact on him as a player. Sean says, would you want a receiver 1,200 yards and 4 touchdowns, or receiver B with 800 yards and 8 touchdowns? I'd probably take receiver A. Here's why. I know the guy with 800 yards has 8 touchdowns, 4 more touchdowns. But if the guy with 1,200 yards is setting us up to score those touchdowns on the ground, or allowing somebody else to score those touchdowns, as long as we're still getting those touchdowns, give me the guy with 400 more yards, because he's probably impacting the game a little bit more, right? Touchdowns don't always tell the story. You want guys that score touchdowns because you're putting points on the board. But if that receiver with 1,200 yards is putting us in a position to score touchdowns and we're getting in to the end zone, give me the guy with the more yards. I'll take receiver A in that conversation. Ghost Rider writes, I think Luke will have a good rookie season. We'll see. It's hard to predict anybody having this, that, or the third, but we'll see. We'll see what ultimately comes of this rookie class and what they ultimately do. Really looking forward to seeing how these guys mature, how they're utilized, and what it all looks like on the field. But remember, if you're a Commanders fan, I'll be live tonight, 8:30. Got an interesting conversation that I want to have with you guys looking forward to chopping it up with you. So hopefully you can be there tomorrow night. Rio, Ed, Rico, myself, Commanders Kings, live, 8 o'clock p.m. sharp, talking Commanders draft and where we go from here, what the offseason has looked like and where we think this team is heading and what are some of the expectations as we head into I want to say into camp, but we still got a little ways to go there, scheduled and all of that good stuff. But hopefully you'll be able to join me for both of those shows tonight and tomorrow night. So let's go ahead and transition to our final segment of the show. And that is, of course, garbage time. So I told you guys this and I teased this at the beginning of the show. I think I watched the single best piece of content in programming that I've ever witnessed on the interweb last night. I was so compelled by this particular show and interview. And I've never watched a full episode of The Drink Champs. Never. It's the first time that I've ever done it. But I've seen clips from the show and I've seen, little segments or whatever. And I told you guys earlier in the show, and I've said this in the past, I believe, that I've gone down the rabbit hole. I go down the rabbit hole quite often when it comes to shorts, specifically on YouTube. I'm a shorts guy. And so you get me with a short, and then I go to the next one, and then I go to the next one. And I happen to be on YouTube, and usually I don't watch YouTube shorts when I'm watching YouTube on my television. Usually the shorts get me when I'm on my phone. This particular time, however, I was on YouTube last night after I'd done the live stream on MusicHead. And I wanted to sit back, kick back, relax, and I think I was going to go check out some Grizzlies content, kind of catch up on some of that stuff. And I just happened to go past this short of Will.i.am on the Drink Champs. And I don't know why it caught my eye or, what made me click on it, but I did. And I'm so glad that I did. And so what got me, the short that got me was Will.i.am has this impeccable and immaculate Mexican accent. So what I didn't know is he grew up in East LA. And so he grew up around a bunch of Mexicans, and he's essentially Mexican, right? He adopted that culture, and he's like, yo, my family grew up in that environment for over 50 years. My family moved there in the 50s, and that's all we know, right? He's like, when I moved my family out of that neighborhood, we cried because we've been like such parts of that, but he always goes back. He's built up the neighborhood. He's put, institutions there. Like, he's like, I go back all the time. Like, he's like, one of the Cholo rules is high socks, like sock check, fool. Right. So he showed off his socks. He's like, yo, I always wear my socks high. And his socks were like all the way up to his knee. Right. And he did this accent where he was talking about getting jumped into a gang and then out of a gang and then getting beat by his mom. So the story he told in the short that I saw that compelled me was he was in the neighborhood and they were trying to recruit him into the neighborhood gang, right? And so, in order to get into a gang, you got to get jumped in. So it was like, yo, they want to jump you into the gang, Holmes. And he's like, don't know if I really want to do it. And he used some terminology that they use, like I forgot what he said, but it was funny, it was hilarious. And I'm a lurker, so I went into the comment section, and all the Mexicans were like, yo, he's got it down pat. And some of them were like, yo, I'm from that neighborhood, that's exactly how they talk, that's their mannerisms. And so it was essentially like, stop being a punk. But they had it was like a certain word that they use, right, for not being a punk. I can't remember the word that he said, but it was funny. So he was like, all right, I'm gonna do it, right? So they jumped him in, and somebody runs to his mom's house, and I forgot his mom's name. He said her name a bunch of times, but let's just say her name was Vanessa. I don't remember her name, but he was like, yeah, Leva. That's what it was. Like, don't be a lever, fool. Like, don't be a lever. Like, do it, right? Come on, don't be a lever. So it was funny, right? And he said that, and so they coaxed him into doing it. Like, so he did it. So somebody ran to his mom's house and was like, hey, Vanessa, she went to the house and she ran and she was like, they're jumping him into a gang, right? She's like, Vanessa, they're jumping Willie into a gang, right? So his mom comes outside and she was, and like, he's got all these accents down pat, right? I'm talking about like to a science. So he does his mom. So mom runs like, get him up. She said, now jump him out, right? Like, jump him out of the game. So they stood him up, they beat him up, jumped him out of the game. She took him home and she beat him in the house, right? So he tells that story. Hilarious. So I was like captivated by that. His whole story too, like just growing up in East LA and being in that culture and how he had the accent down to a science. It drew me in. So I'm like, all right, I want the whole thing. So I went and watched the whole episode, and it's a game changer. It's a life. I won't say a life changer. It's a game changer for me though. Like, it's the best thing I've watched on the internet, I think, ever in my life, because it was informative, it was entertaining, and it opened my mind to things that I didn't know were possible. Like, he's such a nuanced individual. So you go from the East LA upbringing, and he called himself a Blaxican and I forgot what, like a Brolo, right? Like, they call it Cholos, and so he's a Brolo, right? And so he had, like, I didn't know he was in the game as long as he was. Like, I didn't realize he was as intertwined in the industry as he was. So he's telling us stories from back in '89 and all the way up until present day. He had a story about Prince and Michael Jackson and meeting all these people, and he had a Tupac story. I mean, the stories that this dude told, all right? He told a story about they were shooting a video. That was a hilarious story. I had to rewind it like 4 or 5 times. He told a story about La Raza, the video they shot for La Raza. And they wanted him to be in a video. They came to his house. You have to watch this episode of Drink Champs. If you haven't, trust me, I wouldn't lead you astray. And they go to shoot the video, and they want him to be in the video. And so one of the essays comes to the house. I forgot what his name was. I think his name was like I think his name was like a drug or something, like cocaine or something like that, or whatever. I don't remember what his name was. But he came to the house, and he's not like, I forgot what his mom's name was, but he's like, I told you we were just gonna say her name was Vanessa, but that wasn't her name. He's like, Vanessa, go get Willie. Like, they're shooting a video down at the mural. Like, we want Willie to be in a video. And she's like, I'm not letting him go out there shoot no damn music video. Like, so the dude is like, come on, Vanessa, don't snap. Like, don't snap. Like, come on, like let Willie come out, man. Like, it was so hilarious. Like, you have to watch it. And he nails every even his Michael Jackson impersonation. He's like, oh no, Prince is a meanie, right? Like, it was the best interview I've ever seen. But he also, he's big into AI, artificial intelligence. And he had the app with him that he's working on. And that app was so powerful and it was so dope. And it got me to thinking about what the future may look like. And I hadn't really given it much thought, right? But AI is such a powerful thing. And we've seen that, just over the last 2 weeks with Drake using, and this is kind of what he was alluding to. He didn't say it, but I wanted him to bring it up, but they didn't bring it up. But Drake just used Tupac's and Snoop Dogg's voice, right? AI, without their consent, by the way. And Tupac's estate sent a cease and desist to Drake, forcing him to take it down. And he was saying that, and so they were telling him the story about Beanie Siegel and the DLC. We all know DLC, dope rapper, got in a car accident, voice was never the same. And so DOC's kind of mulling over whether he wants to use AI to generate his rhymes now, because it could be a game changer for him. He can get back in the game now. Beanie Siegel doesn't sound the same. Like, he's kind of lost his voice. He doesn't sound the same. And he's using AI to try to, to replicate his voice the way that it used to sound, because he doesn't sound the same. And Will.i.am was like, yeah, that's kind of a slippery slope. I'm an advocate for AI. I'm working on AI software right now, but you got to make sure that you own the rights to your voice, essentially, right? So it's so many conversations there, and he went into detail, and then he showed the AI how it worked. And Will.i.am is effing brilliant. Brilliant, I tell you. I walked away mesmerized by him, by the storytelling, by his ability to do voices. Like, his impersonations were spot on. He did James Brown, right? He did everybody, Michael Jackson, obviously the Cholos in his neighborhood. He did his mom. He did Eazy-E, because I didn't know that Eazy-E was one of his mentors and he was signed to Ruthless Records. Like, his story is so rich, and there's so many layers that you peel back and you get more and you get more and you get more. And he talked about the Black Eyed Peas, obviously, and how they were formulated. And he's such an interesting guy, man. It was a great watch. I recommend the episode with Will.i.am on Drink Champs to anybody that has time. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes long, and you won't regret it, and you'll want more when it's done, right? I assure you. And you'll laugh, you'll be compelled, and he's just such a captivating figure. I had no idea, none. And at his core, he's still black as hell. You wonder, because he's like, he had such a cultured background, right? Grew up in East LA around Mexicans, went to school with white kids, but obviously was raised in an environment and grew up around, Mexicans, but was in a black family. So he had all of that. It was like a melting pot for him. So he's so versed in so many different lanes that boy, tell you what, I'd watch it again. It was so good. I'd watch it again. And again, I've never watched an entire episode of Drink Champs before. I've seen clips. I've watched 14, 15-minute pockets. I've watched shorts. I've never sat down and watched an entire episode of Nori, Effin, and a guest till now. Anyway, I digress. Don't be a lover. Yeah, that's exactly what he said, JQ. Don't be a lover, Holmes. Don't be a lover, fool. Right? It's just the accents alone, man, did it for me. Right? Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on this installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys next time. Wednesday, we'll be back. We'll talk NBA basketball, anything else that comes up. Hopefully, we'll have the schedule release date by then. I'm thinking it's next week, among other topics. We'll bring that to the forefront, and we'll have some other discussions as well on the next episode of the Louie T Network podcast. If anything else happens with the Drake and Kendrick beef, we'll discuss a little bit of that. But, you know, MusicHead is where you need to go if you want that kind of content. So make sure you subscribe to that channel if you haven't already done so. Anyway, I digress. You guys get out of here. If you're a Commanders fan or you just want to come kick it with us later on tonight, I'll be live for the Command Post tonight. Interesting topic of discussion. Hopefully you can join and be a part of that discussion tonight. And then tomorrow, Commanders Kings. Rico, Ed, Rio, myself, chopping it up, talking burgundy and gold. Hopefully you can be there as well. You guys have a good one. Take care. God bless and good night.